You did something last night that you do every single night of your life, something so routine, so automatic, that you've never once stopped to question it. You closed your eyes, you drifted away, and for roughly 8 hours you disappeared. You weren't dead. But you weren't exactly alive in the way you normally think of it, either. Your muscles went slack. Your sense of the outside world dissolved. Your conscious mind, that voice in your head that narrates your entire waking life, went quiet, and something else took over. Now, here's what should bother you about that. Here's what should genuinely unsettle you if you let it. You have no idea what happened. Oh sure, you might remember a dream, maybe a fragment, a face, a falling sensation, a conversation with someone who doesn't exist. But the rest of it, the vast majority of what your brain did during those hours, gone, erased, as if it never happened. And yet, and this is the part that fascinated Richard Feynman, your brain wasn't resting, it wasn't idle. It wasn't powered down like some machine waiting for the morning shift. No, your brain during sleep was doing some of the most extraordinary, complex, and essential work it does in the entire 24-hour cycle. Feynman once said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the first principle of science is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. And sleep? Sleep is perhaps the greatest self-deception we carry. We call it rest. We treat it like downtime. We sacrifice it, cut it short, brag about needing less of it, as if consciousness is the only state that matters, and sleep is merely its absence. But what if sleep isn't the absence of anything? What if it's the presence of something so vital, so intricate, so breathtakingly engineered by evolution, that without it you wouldn't be you when you woke up? Let me take you inside. Let me show you what's really happening behind your closed eyelids, in the dark theater of a sleeping brain. Because once you see it, once you truly understand what goes on in there, you will never think of sleep as just sleep again. Let's start at the beginning. The moment you decide to go to sleep, you turn off the light. You settle into your pillow. And you wait. But what exactly are you waiting for? Here's something most people don't realize. Falling asleep is not a single event. It's not like flipping a switch. It's more like descending a staircase with distinct landings, each one taking you deeper into a fundamentally different state of being. Neuroscientists have mapped this staircase. They've given the landings clinical names. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, Stage 4, and then that strange paradoxical place called REM. But the names don't capture the drama. The names don't capture what's actually happening to the organ inside your skull. So let's forget the clinical language for a moment. Let's talk about what it feels like and what it looks like from the perspective of your neurons. You're lying in bed. Your eyes are closed. Your brain, at this point, is still firing in what's called the beta wave pattern. This is the signature of wakefulness. Fast, irregular, chattering electrical activity. Billions of neurons, each doing their own thing, processing the residue of the day. Your brain, in this state, sounds like a crowded restaurant. Everyone is talking. No one is synchronized. It's productive chaos, but then something shifts. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons sitting just above where your optic nerves cross, has been tracking the light. All day, it's been keeping time. And now, as darkness has settled in and the signals from your eyes confirm the absence of light, this little biological clock sends a message. The message travels to the pineal gland, a pea-sized structure nestled deep in the center of your brain, and the pineal gland begins to release melatonin. Now, melatonin doesn't make you sleep. That's a common misunderstanding. Melatonin is more like a town crier announcing that the gates are closing. It's a signal, a chemical whisper that says the conditions for sleep are now met, and your brain listens. The fast, chaotic beta waves begin to slow. They stretch out. They become what we call alpha waves, smoother, more rhythmic, like the difference between a jackhammer and a gentle tide. You feel it as drowsiness, that soft heaviness in your eyelids, that loosening of thought, where your mind starts to drift and logic starts to blur. You're on the first step of the staircase now. Stage 1. And Feynman would have loved this part, because Stage 1 is where the brain starts doing something very peculiar. It starts lying to you. Have you ever been falling asleep and suddenly jerked awake, your whole body twitching as if you'd tripped off a curb? That's called a hypnic jerk. And it happens because your brain, in its transition from wakefulness to sleep, briefly misinterprets its own signals. Your muscles are relaxing, your brainstem is beginning to inhibit voluntary movement. And somewhere in the chaos of the handoff, a cluster of neurons in your motor cortex fires a false alarm. "We're falling," it shouts, and your body responds before your conscious mind can correct it. It's a glitch, a beautiful, harmless glitch in the machinery of descent. And it tells us something profound. Even in the earliest moments of sleep, your brain is already reorganizing itself, already shifting authority from one system to another. But you settle, the jerk passes, and you continue down. Stage 2. This is where things get interesting. You brain waves slow further. But now, embedded within those slower waves, something new appears. Neuroscientists call them sleep spindles, short bursts of rapid oscillation lasting about half a second each, occurring in rhythmic clusters. On an EEG readout, they look like little coiled springs woven into the fabric of a slower rhythm. What are they doing? This is where Feynman's instinct, to look beyond the surface, to ask why rather than what, would kick in. Because sleep spindles aren't random. They're not noise. They are, as far as we can tell, one of the most important things your brain does for your waking life. Sleep spindles appear to be the brain's filing system in action. During your waking hours, your brain accumulates an enormous amount of information, conversations, observations, skills you practiced, facts you encountered, emotions you experienced. All of this is initially stored in a temporary holding area, primarily the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure buried in your temporal lobe. The hippocampus is fast. It's good at grabbing new information quickly. But it has limited capacity. Think of it like a desk. Over the course of a day, that desk gets piled high. Sleep spindles are the moment when your brain starts moving files from the desk into the filing cabinet, from the hippocampus into the vast long-term storage networks of the neocortex. Each spindle appears to represent a burst of communication between these two regions, a rapid-fire exchange in which a memory is replayed, strengthened, and relocated. And here's what's remarkable. The number of sleep spindles you produce correlates directly with your ability to remember what you learned the day before. People who produce more spindles perform better on memory tests. People whose spindles are disrupted by alcohol, by medication, by sleep disorders, show measurable deficits in learning. You are not resting, you are consolidating. You are literally rebuilding yourself, piece by piece, memory by memory, in the dark. But we're not at the bottom of the staircase yet. The deepest stage is still to come. Stage 3. Deep sleep. Slow wave sleep. This is the basement of consciousness. Your brain waves have now become enormous, rolling, synchronized oscillations, delta waves. If the beta waves of wakefulness are a crowded restaurant, and the alpha waves of drowsiness are a gentle tide, then delta waves are something else entirely. They are tsunamis. Massive, slow, coordinated electrical pulses that sweep across the entire cortex in unison. And this is strange. This is deeply, fundamentally strange, because during waking life, the hallmark of your brain's activity is diversity. Different regions doing different things. Your visual cortex processing sight, while your auditory cortex processes sound, while your prefrontal cortex plans tomorrow's schedule. Independence, specialization, parallel processing. But in deep sleep, all of that dissolves. The entire cortex begins to pulse together. Billions of neurons firing in sync, then going silent, then firing again. On, off, like a single, massive heartbeat of thought. Why? What could possibly require the entire brain to act as one? The answer, discovered largely in the last decade and a half, is one of the most stunning findings in modern neuroscience. And it has to do with something you'd never expect. Garbage collection. Your brain, like every other organ in your body, produces waste, metabolic byproducts, broken down proteins, cellular debris. In the rest of your body, the lymphatic system handles this, a network of vessels that carries waste away to be processed and eliminated. But the brain doesn't have a traditional lymphatic system. For decades, scientists wondered, how does the brain take out its trash? The answer came in 2012, when a team led by Macon Nettergaard at the University of Rochester discovered something extraordinary. They called it the glymphatic system, a play on glial cells and lymphatic. And it works like this. During deep sleep, specifically during those massive synchronized delta waves, the glial cells in your brain shrink. They physically contract, creating channels between them, and cerebrospinal fluid, which surrounds your brain, begins to rush through those channels like water through open floodgates. It flows through the tissue, washing between the neurons, flushing out the accumulated waste of the day. And what is that waste? Among other things, beta amyloid and tau proteins. If those names sound familiar, they should. Beta amyloid plaques and tau tangles are the hallmark signatures of Alzheimer's disease. They are the toxic accumulations that over years and decades destroy neural connections and erode memory, personality, and cognition. And your brain clears them out every single night, during deep sleep, while you are unconscious. While you think nothing is happening, let that sink in. Every night you cut your sleep short. Every night you stay up late scrolling through your phone. Every night you sacrifice an hour for productivity. You are reducing the time your brain has to flush out the proteins that, if left to accumulate, can contribute to neurodegenerative disease. Feynman, who spent his life insisting that nature doesn't care about what we find convenient or what we wish were true, would have found this both beautiful and sobering. The universe didn't design sleep to be optional. Evolution didn't spend hundreds of millions of years crafting this elaborate nightly ritual because it was redundant. Sleep, deep sleep in particular, is maintenance. It is the brain's janitorial shift, and the janitors are not optional. But the glymphatic system isn't the only thing happening in the deep. During slow-wave sleep, your body releases the majority of its daily growth hormone, the hormone responsible for tissue repair, muscle recovery, bone density, and cellular regeneration. Your immune system ramps up, producing cytokines and other immune factors that fight infection and inflammation. Your cardiovascular system gets a reprieve, as heart rate and blood pressure drop to their lowest points of the day. Deep sleep is when the body heals. It's when injuries mend. It's when the immune system trains its soldiers. It's when children literally grow, their bones elongating, their tissues expanding, fueled by the surge of growth hormone that only comes in the deep. You are not resting, you are being rebuilt. And still, we haven't reached the strangest part of the night. Because after your brain descends to the bottom of the staircase, after it spends its time in the deep, it does something no one fully understands. It climbs back up, and it enters a state that is in many ways more mysterious than unconsciousness itself. It starts to dream, REM sleep, rapid eye movement, the stage of sleep in which your brain becomes, by many measures, more active than it is when you are awake. Let's talk about what happens to your body first, because it's eerie. As you enter REM sleep, your brainstem sends a signal that effectively paralyzes your voluntary muscles. Your arms, your legs, your torso, all of it goes limp, completely, utterly limp. This is called atonia, and it is not a bug. It is an absolutely critical feature, because during REM sleep, your motor cortex is firing. It's sending movement commands. If those commands reached your muscles, you would act out your dreams. You would run. You would fight. You would thrash and kick and scream. In fact, there is a condition, REM sleep behavior disorder, in which this paralysis mechanism fails. People with this disorder do exactly what I just described. They punch walls. They leap out of bed. They injure themselves and their partners, all while completely unconscious, all while dreaming. So your brain in its wisdom cuts the connection. It lets the motor cortex fire all it wants, but it disconnects the wires that lead to the muscles. You are, during REM, a prisoner of your own skull, a mind unleashed, trapped in a frozen body. But above the neck, everything is blazing. Your visual cortex lights up as though you're actually seeing, even though your eyes are closed and no visual information is entering through the retina. Your emotional centers, particularly the amygdala, become hyperactive, surging with feelings that are often more intense than anything you experience while awake. Your prefrontal cortex, meanwhile, the rational, logical, executive part of your brain, goes largely offline. Think about what that combination means. You have vivid visual experience without external input. You have intense emotion without rational oversight. You have a sense of narrative and meaning without the ability to question whether any of it makes sense. You are, in the most literal neurological sense, hallucinating, and you believe every moment of it is real. Feynman, who was famously fascinated by his own dreams and even trained himself to become aware within them, what we now call lucid dreaming, understood this intuitively. He wrote about lying in bed, deliberately exploring the boundary between waking thought and dream thought, trying to catch the exact moment when logic gave way to narrative, when the controlled mind surrendered to the uncontrolled. He was fascinated not because dreams are mystical, but because they reveal something about the machinery of the mind that waking life conceals. And he was right, because the neuroscience of REM sleep has revealed something that should astound anyone who takes it seriously. During REM, your brain is not generating random noise. It is not simply misfiring. It is working. It is performing functions that appear to be essential for emotional regulation, creative problem solving, and even survival. Let's take these one at a time. First, emotional regulation. Matthew Walker, the neuroscientist and sleep researcher at UC Berkeley, has described REM sleep as overnight therapy, and the metaphor is apt. During REM, your brain replays emotionally charged experiences from the day. But, and this is crucial, it replays them in a different neurochemical environment. Specifically, during REM sleep, the levels of norepinephrine, the brain's stress chemical, the molecule associated with anxiety, fear, and alertness, drop to essentially zero. This is the only time in the entire 24-hour cycle that your brain is completely free of norepinephrine. So what happens when you replay a stressful memory in the absence of stress chemistry? You process the memory without re-experiencing the emotional charge. The content of the memory is preserved, but the sting is removed. The meaning survives, but the pain dissolves. This is why, after a good night's sleep, a problem that felt catastrophic at midnight often feels manageable in the morning. This is why the old advice to sleep on it is not folk wisdom, but neuroscience. Your brain, during REM, is literally performing a kind of emotional triage, going through the events of the day, stripping away the toxic emotional coating, and filing the lessons learned in a form you can access without being re-traumatized. People who are deprived of REM sleep, whether by sleep disorders, alcohol, which suppresses REM, or deliberate experimental disruption, show dramatically increased emotional reactivity. They become more anxious, more prone to anger, more sensitive to perceived threats. The amygdala, no longer properly recalibrated each night, begins to overreact. The prefrontal cortex, no longer properly supported, struggles to modulate. In other words, without REM sleep, you begin to lose your emotional equilibrium. The world starts to feel more threatening than it actually is. Your reactions become disproportionate. Your relationships suffer. Your judgment deteriorates. And this, Walker and others have argued, is not unrelated to the epidemic of anxiety and depression in modern societies where sleep is chronically restricted. We are not sleeping enough, and specifically, we are not dreaming enough. And our collective emotional health may be paying the price. But REM sleep isn't just an emotional laundromat. It's also, remarkably, a creative laboratory. Feynman himself might have intuited this. He was a man who valued play, who approached problems sideways, who trusted his unconscious mind to make connections his conscious mind couldn't see. And the neuroscience of REM sleep suggests he was onto something. During REM, the brain engages in what researchers call associative processing. It takes memories, ideas, and experiences from different domains, things that, during waking life, are stored in separate neural networks, and it begins to connect them. Randomly? No, not quite randomly. It connects them based on abstract similarities rather than literal ones. During waking life, your brain tends to think linearly and categorically. A hammer is a tool. A nail is a fastener. A house is a structure. These things are related in obvious logical ways. But during REM, the brain loosens these categorical boundaries. A hammer might connect to a gavel. A gavel might connect to justice. Justice might connect to a childhood memory of fairness on a playground. That playground might connect to the smell of cut grass. And suddenly, inexplicably, you're dreaming about mowing a courtroom lawn while a judge hands you a trophy made of nails. It sounds absurd, and in the dream, it is absurd. But the process underlying it is not absurd at all. It's the brain searching for hidden connections, testing novel combinations, exploring the space of possible relationships between ideas that, in waking life, would never be placed side by side. And this process has measurable consequences. Studies have shown that people who are allowed to enter REM sleep between being exposed to a problem and being asked to solve it show dramatically improved performance, but specifically on problems that require creative insight rather than brute force logic. Problems where the solution depends on seeing a hidden connection. Problems where you need to abandon one framework and adopt another. The chemist Auguste Kekule famously reported that the structure of the benzene ring came to him in a dream, a vision of a snake eating its own tail. Dmitri Mendeleev claimed the arrangement of the periodic table appeared to him during sleep. Paul McCartney has said that the melody for Yesterday arrived in a dream, fully formed. Now, Feynman would caution us here. He would say, be careful about anecdotes. Be careful about confirmation bias. People remember the dreams that turned out to be useful and forget the thousands that were nonsense. And he'd be right. But the experimental evidence supports the underlying claim. REM sleep facilitates a kind of cognitive flexibility, a loosening of rigid associative patterns that is essential for creative thought. It doesn't guarantee eureka moments, but it creates the conditions in which they become possible. You are not resting during REM. You are exploring. Your brain is running simulations, testing combinations, building bridges between islands of knowledge that, during the day, remain isolated. And the dreams you sometimes remember? They are the visible froth on the surface of this vast invisible ocean of processing. There's one more function of dreaming that deserves attention because it connects to something ancient, something that predates human civilization, that predates language, that may even predate the evolution of mammals. Threat simulation. Have you ever noticed that dreams are disproportionately stressful, that they involve being chased, being late, being unprepared, being lost, being attacked? Survey after survey of dream content shows the same pattern. Negative emotions outweigh positive ones in dreams by a significant margin. Anxiety, fear, and frustration dominate the dreamscape. Why? The Finnish neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo proposed what he called the threat simulation theory. The idea is this: dreaming evolved, at least in part, as a kind of rehearsal space, a virtual reality simulator in which your brain could practice responding to dangerous scenarios without any of the actual danger. Think about what that means from an evolutionary perspective. An ancestral human who dreamed about being chased by a predator, who practiced the escape, who rehearsed the fear, who ran the simulation over and over, would be fractionally better prepared if the real thing happened. Their motor sequences would be primed. Their emotional responses would be calibrated. Their survival would be, marginally but meaningfully, more likely. And in evolution, marginal advantages compound over generations. Your nightmares, in other words, may not be malfunctions. They may be training exercises. Your brain, during REM, is running you through the worst-case scenarios, not to torment you, but to prepare you. Not because it's cruel, but because for millions of years, the organisms that practiced in their sleep were the ones that survived. Feynman, who respected the elegance of natural systems even when they seemed messy or irrational, would have appreciated this. The apparent chaos of dreams, the absurdity, the anxiety, the bizarre narratives, isn't chaos at all. It's function disguised as dysfunction. It's engineering, wearing the mask of madness. Now, I've been describing these stages, deep sleep and REM, as though they happen in sequence, and they do. But the full picture is more intricate than a simple descent and ascent. Over the course of a full night's sleep, your brain doesn't just go through these stages once. It cycles through them repeatedly, approximately every 90 minutes. 4 to 6 complete cycles per night, each one slightly different from the last. And here's the detail that changes everything about how you think about sleep. The composition of each cycle shifts as the night progresses. In the first half of the night, your cycles are dominated by deep, slow-wave sleep. This is when the majority of the lymphatic cleaning happens. This is when growth hormone surges. This is when physical restoration is prioritized. In the second half of the night, the balance shifts. Deep sleep recedes, and REM sleep takes over. Your REM periods become longer and more intense as morning approaches. The final REM period, typically occurring in the last hour or two of sleep, can last 45 minutes to an hour. This means something practical and critically important. If you cut your sleep short by even an hour or two, you are not losing a proportional amount of each stage. You are disproportionately losing REM sleep. You are cutting into the creative processing, the emotional regulation, the threat simulation, the associative exploration. And if you go to bed very late, staying up past your natural circadian window, you may be disproportionately losing deep sleep. The cleaning, the restoration, the memory consolidation. The architecture of the night is not uniform. It is structured. It is designed by millions of years of evolutionary pressure to deliver specific benefits at specific times. And when we truncate or disrupt that architecture, we don't just get less sleep. We get a different kind of sleep, an incomplete kind, a version of sleep that fails to deliver what the brain needs. Feynman once said that nature uses only the longest threads to weave her patterns, so that each small piece of her fabric reveals the organization of the entire tapestry. Sleep is precisely this kind of fabric. Every stage is connected to every other stage. Every cycle builds on the last. And the pattern only works when you see the whole cloth. Let me ask you a question. If you owned a car and the manual said, "This engine requires regular oil changes or it will seize up and destroy itself," would you skip the oil changes? If you owned a house and an engineer told you the foundation needs maintenance or the whole structure will eventually crack and collapse, would you ignore the engineer? We treat our machines with more respect than we treat our brains. The research on chronic sleep deprivation reads like a catalog of catastrophe. Here is what happens when human beings consistently get fewer than 7 hours of sleep per night. Cognitively, your attention span deteriorates. Your reaction time slows. Your working memory, the mental workspace you use to hold and manipulate information, shrinks. After about 20 hours without sleep, your cognitive impairment is equivalent to being legally drunk. After several nights of even modest sleep restrictions, say 6 hours instead of 8, the deficits accumulate. And here's the insidious part. Your subjective sense of your own impairment diminishes faster than the impairment itself. You stop noticing how impaired you are. You feel fine. You think you've adapted, but every objective measure tells a different story. Emotionally, chronic sleep loss amplifies the amygdala's reactivity by up to 60%, while simultaneously weakening the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate it. You become more emotionally volatile, more reactive, more prone to interpreting neutral situations as threatening. Physically, sleep deprivation disrupts glucose metabolism, increasing insulin resistance and the risk of type 2 diabetes. It elevates cortisol, the stress hormone, which promotes fat storage, suppresses immune function, and accelerates aging. It reduces the production of natural killer cells, the immune system's frontline defense against cancer. In fact, the World Health Organization has classified nighttime shift work, a proxy for chronic sleep disruption, as a probable carcinogen. Cardiovascularly, even losing a single hour of sleep has measurable effects. Every spring, when daylight saving time causes most people in the United States to lose 1 hour of sleep, hospitals report a measurable spike in heart attacks the following day. When the hour is regained in the fall, heart attacks drop. 1 hour. That's all it takes. And then there's the long game, the beta amyloid, the tau proteins, the glymphatic system, running on a shortened schedule, failing to clear the day's waste completely, night after night, year after year. The slow, invisible accumulation of the molecular debris that has been linked, not as the sole cause, but as a significant contributing factor to Alzheimer's disease. Feynman died of cancer. He didn't die of Alzheimer's. But I think he would have been fascinated and troubled by this research, because it reveals something about the human relationship with knowledge that he spent his life trying to correct. We ignore what we don't want to believe. We rationalize. We tell ourselves we're the exception. We say, I function fine on 5 hours. And our brains, impaired by the very deprivation we're denying, can't muster the resources to argue back. So what would Feynman make of all this? I think he would do what he always did. He would start with what we know. He would marvel at the mechanism, the sleep spindles, the delta waves, the glymphatic rivers, the REM paralysis, the emotional recalibration, the creative associations. He would see the beauty in it, the elegance, the way evolution solved the impossible engineering problem of maintaining a brain that is too complex, too active, too alive to sustain itself without periodic shutdown and repair. But then, and this is what made Feynman, he would turn to what we don't know, and what we don't know is enormous. We don't fully understand why consciousness dissolves during deep sleep, but reappears in a distorted form during REM. We don't know why some memories are consolidated during sleep and others are discarded. Who or what is making that choice? We don't understand the precise mechanism by which sleep spindles transfer memories from hippocampus to cortex. We don't know why the brain generates the specific narrative content of dreams, why this dream and not another. We don't know whether dreams have additional functions beyond what we've identified, or whether the functions we've identified are even the primary ones. We don't even know, at the most fundamental level, why sleep exists at all. That sounds like a strange thing to say after everything I've just told you. But consider every function of sleep that I've described: waste clearance, memory consolidation, emotional processing, immune support. These could, in principle, be performed during wakefulness. There's no a priori reason why the brain needs to go offline to flush out amyloid or file memories, and yet every animal with a nervous system sleeps, or exhibits something functionally equivalent to sleep. Dolphins sleep with half their brain at a time so they can keep swimming. Migrating birds sleep in 10-second micro naps while flying. Even fruit flies sleep. Even nematode worms, organisms with precisely 302 neurons, show sleep-like states. Sleep is universal. Sleep is ancient. And its universality and antiquity suggest that whatever it does, it is so essential that evolution never found a way around it. Not once. Not in any lineage, not in any environment. No creature has ever evolved the ability to simply not sleep. That should tell you something. That should tell you that sleep is not a luxury. It is not a weakness. It is not a problem to be optimized away by caffeine and willpower and blue light glasses. It is a fundamental requirement of complex biological information processing. It is woven into the architecture of every brain that has ever existed on this planet, and it is, in Feynman's sense, one of the great unsolved problems in science, not because we know nothing about it, we know a great deal, but because the more we learn, the more we realize how much remains hidden. The more doors we open, the longer the hallway becomes. So tonight, when you close your eyes and begin that familiar descent, when the alpha waves wash over you, when the spindles fire, when the delta waves roll through like slow thunder, know this: you are not doing nothing. Your brain is conducting a symphony of such staggering complexity that our best neuroscientists, armed with the most sophisticated imaging technology ever built, are still mapping its movements. Waste is being flushed through newly opened channels. Memories are being sorted, strengthened, and woven into the fabric of who you are. Emotions are being stripped of their venom and filed as wisdom. Creative connections are being forged between ideas that your waking mind would never place together. Threats are being rehearsed. Tissues are being rehearsed. Your immune system is being armed. And somewhere, in the theater of REM, a dream is being staged. A strange, vivid, irrational production designed by an intelligence you don't control and can't observe, performed for an audience of one who won't remember most of it by morning. Feynman spent his life peeling back the layers of nature's mysteries: quantum mechanics, particle physics, the mathematics of the subatomic world. And yet the mystery inside his own skull, playing out every night behind his own closed eyes, remained as deep and as provocative as anything he found in a laboratory. Here's what I want to leave you with. Not a conclusion, but a question. Feynman's kind of question. If your brain does all of this extraordinary, essential, impossibly intricate work during sleep, then what does that say about the nature of consciousness? If the most important maintenance, the deepest processing, the most creative leaps happen when you aren't there, then who is doing the work? Is it still you? Is the dreaming mind the same entity as the waking mind? Or is the self you know, the narrator, the decision-maker, the one who says, I, just one tenant in a building that has a very busy night shift? Sleep doesn't just maintain your brain. It raises a question about what your brain is, about what you are, about the relationship between the conscious experience you call your life and the vast, silent, purposeful processing that unfolds in the dark. Tonight, as you fall asleep, try to catch it. Try to notice the moment the alpha waves take hold. Try to feel the hypnic jerk. Try to sense the threshold between one kind of mind and another. You probably won't succeed. Feynman tried. He got close. But the transition is, by its nature, something consciousness can't witness, because it is the moment consciousness steps aside. And that, perhaps, is the deepest mystery of all, not what happens to your brain when you sleep, but the fact that the most essential version of you, the one that heals, that learns, that creates, that survives, is the one you never get to meet. Sleep well tonight. Your brain has work to do.